To the June 2nd Board of Supervisors, and the first thing on our agenda is to have a roll call of the board members that are present. Is Emily?
Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Oates?
Here.
Mr. Mabe?
Here.
Ms. Colors?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
I guess because we're masked, Mr. May, people might not recognize us.
Yeah, we're masked.
Yeah.
Next thing on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. The first item on the agenda, is there any additions or subtractions from the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, could we add to the agenda discussion of the COVID-19 state of emergency, just to have a conversation of where we are, where we're going, that kind of thing?
Mr. Farrell, is he around?
He's here. Yes, sir.
Could you bring him out? Is it?
Do you know where you want to add it on the agenda? Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
we'll add it at the very end.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Farrell will give us a brief update.
Mr. May, would it make better sense if we put that at the end of the reports so that he isn't here through our closed session and having to wait should that closed session take a lot of time, which they typically do?
You mean make it an item I
Make it an item I.
or an I1?
Or I1 or
H1, maybe H1.
Yeah, H1.
H1, sorry.
That's what I would suggest. That way we aren't holding Mr. Farrell up for the
Agree.
rest of the day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Not that it matters, but we had that work session item. Is Mr. Farrell going to be part of that too, as far as giving us his expertise? So it really doesn't matter. We can still put him on there. He's going to be here anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
But still, I'd say leave it at H1.
Leave it at H1. Thank you.
All right, so Mrs. Oates, are you making a motion to approve the agenda with that change, the
Yes,
addition of
sir.
H1?
I would make the motion that we approve the agenda with the addition of Mr. Farrell's report.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is for the public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for citizens to give them input on issues on the board's agenda which are not the subject of the public hearing and is not intended as a question and answer period. Emily, has anyone signed up?
So Mr. Kushner informed me that he was going to be sending some comments, and he did it around 7 o'clock last night, but I haven't been able to pull it up yet on the email, so I will do that and then read his comments during the general public comment period at the end.
That'll be great. Thank you.
There is also one comment from Christy Atwood on the live chat. She asks that all the annual term contract amendments be removed from the consent agenda until they can be vetted as to the contract itself and go through the Virginia Procurement Act. And there are no further comments from the agenda.
Okay. I received a note from Randall Nord. I'll be happy to read it. It's about responsible pet ownership. And if anyone else would like to read it, I'll be happy to give it to them, but it's very brief. It shouldn't last but a minute or so. Dear Mr. Mabe, Animal care and control is a vital function of local government, but it must be supported by responsible pet ownership practices. Each of us has a part to play in maintaining a safe and healthy community. For the estimated 90 million dogs and 95 million cats owned in the country, local ordinances that support responsible pet ownership can maintain public and animal safety, foster humane treatment, and reduce costs for legal communities and institutions. I invite you and your colleagues to review your local ordinances to ensure that they sufficiently incorporate the following key components to support responsible behaviors in our community. Abandonment of an animal should be prohibited in all cases. 2, sterilization should be required unless an owner explicitly wants to breed his or her pet. Identification, such as licenses and microchips, should be required for pets to help return lost animals to their owners. Roaming pets should be prohibited from the safety of the animal, for the safety of the animal in our community. Responsible pet ownership reduces the financial and administrative burdens of local government and supports a safer community. I ask that our ordinances reflect and encourage those values. Thank you very much for your consideration. Sincerely, Randall Nord, 164 White's Landing Road in Linden. May I have a break just for 1 second? Fine with it. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Emily, is there anything else?
There is also one individual who has asked that you speak louder and more directly into the microphones. I know that we are wearing masks, so our voices are muffled, and they're having difficulty hearing you on the live stream.
What did you say?
We'll speak up and try to do a little bit better. If there are no additional comments, we'll consider that the comment section is closed. Next on our agenda is the reports. Do we have a report from the Virginia Department of Transportation?
Mr. Chair, I'll be glad to read the report from VDOT. For the past month, they've completed ditching operations in the Browntown area on routes 605, 613, 622, 649, 637, and 735. Performed spot asphalt patching on routes 619 and 678, and will be continuing on route 649 next month. Graded various stabilized roads for touch-up after rains and will continue next month as the need arises. Cleaned up storm damage debris on route 603, 638, 649, and 613. Open pipes on route 604, 601, and 638. We'll be closing route 619 with a detour this week for pipe replacement. Perform brush cutting operations for site distance concerns on route 638. Completed mowing on primary routes and began secondary mowing and will continue this month. Litter contractor picked up primary routes and high-volume secondary routes 647, 619, 613, 643, 603, and 638, approximately 1,850 bags of trash they picked up. Perform routine pothole patching and will continue this month as needed, and will be boom axing on Route 639 Ashby Station Road, sweeping bridges on Route 340 South, and performing skin patching various routes for surface treatment. Board issues, completed widening of exit 13 westbound off-ramp to allow restriping for right turn lane. A new striping plan has been developed for right-hand turns to Route 55 West at Route 79 to allow more room for tractor-trailers turning and keeping them off the guardrail at the intersection. Rights-of-ways for usage by the Forest Service to accommodate additional parking at Indian Hollow Bridge and additional parking for the new fire department on 619 is being researched. And that's all Mr. Carter has.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley, for reading that. I have a request.
Yes, sir.
Would you ask Mr. Carter to please include the street names? Because a lot of people just don't know what 619 is.
Okay.
Or whatever the street name that he's calling out. I appreciate it, but an extra minute would really help a lot of people.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. And since Mr. Carter's not here, if Mr. Childress is around, he might be able to help me out with,
He's been back up there.
I have a smart scale question. On this, when money is considered and appropriated out for, I'm trying to get this down and be a due diligent on mass, but be heard at the same time, for smart scale projects, when the state decides where they're going to allocate money for those, what determination do they use in delegating out that money? Who gets the priority, I guess?
Well, there's a number of factors. Each district gets a certain allocation. Okay, so.
Mr. Childress, can you use microphone?
I'm sorry. There's a statewide pot of money that goes to smart scale projects, then each individual construction district, Stanton being a construction district, gets an allocation. And the projects are scored based on various criteria like economic development or impacts, safety, addressing safety hazards, environmental concerns, accident data, things of that nature. The district staff who's responsible for reviewing the applications and all the other applications submitted by the individual jurisdictions take a look at those, score them at the district level. Some of the projects will, or some of the applications will qualify for state monies. Some will qualify for district monies. Some may qualify for both. But the district staff goes through a scoring process, then their recommendations are submitted to VDOT's central office in Richmond, and the staff involved in the smart scale application process at that reviews what the district has submitted and puts together a final list to be presented to the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Then the Commonwealth Transportation Board will make the final selection criteria based on the available statewide and district funding. But by the time it gets to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, the district and central office staffs has whittled the list of applications down to try to fit the available funding. So that, in a nutshell, is how it works.
Do they use traffic volume as part of that?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's part of the safety criteria, looking at traffic volumes, turning movements, things of that nature.
Okay, because my concern is, I noticed that they put out traffic counters. And my concern for our area is a lot of those traffic counters were put out pre-COVID opening, phase one. So our numbers are going to be very diminished. And if they're using those numbers that they got, I know there was one on 340 at the 619 interchange there with the light. There was one going out 619, a couple other places, and then they were there a very short amount of time. And that was before we opened up. So the traffic volume is going to be decreased immensely. So if they look at those numbers and use those to help delegate out what money we're going to get, I fear we're going to be hurting in the long run. And is there anything we can do? Because the town is involved as well. I saw them all over town. And that's going to decrease if they use those numbers. You know, we just didn't have the numbers we would, you know, with tourist travel, that was down. You had the state parks closed down, Skyline Drive shut down. I just worry about the economic impact that's going to have if they take those numbers and use them. And what, can we send a resolution or something to the whoever, VDOT, whoever, or above them, even to the governor, and say, hey, you shouldn't use these numbers. This is unfair to our area, because how long will they use these numbers to decide what they're going to give us?
Very valid point, question, very valid observation. I saw the same thing, and that's the first thing that come to my mind when I saw them, that the traffic counts, traffic volumes are going to be low. I have not had a conversation with VDOT and Mr. Carter about it. Had planned to discuss it with him next time I had an opportunity. Typically, unless things have changed since I left VDOT, most roadways in the state, including cities and towns, are counted on a 3-year basis or timeline. So while you'll see counters out on the road on some roads this year, next year it'll be a different set of roadways. I do know that in the past, VDOT will use projections when they look at the actual numbers. If it's something that's going to impact a traffic count on a certain road. Say, for example, they count a road and 2 miles down the road, there's a major construction project going on, and motorists would have an opportunity to bypass that construction. So that may be what they're planning to do this year with the counts. It's a question I can certainly ask, but yeah, I think it goes without saying the counts this year that they take are going to be down. So they'll have to do some sort of an analysis to bump those numbers up. If not, they'll be grossly flawed. So, and you're right, they'll impact our ability, maybe not with the current applications we've got submitted,
No, but for future.
applications, next year, 2 or 3 years down the road. But I
Right.
can certainly discuss that with Mr. Carter. And then if they don't plan to add anything to those numbers, then perhaps a resolution or something in writing to VDOT would be appropriate.
Right, because I noticed they put them up like on a Tuesday, Wednesday. You're hitting in the middle of the week when your volume is down for a tourist area to begin with, and then right before anything was even opened up. So it just worries me, and, I thought, do we wait until our allocations go down and then cry about it, or we be proactive and say, hey, we don't think this is a fair system, and you need to come back after things open up and recount it, or, I just don't feel like we should sit and not do anything.
Mr. Chair, if I can just append to Mr. George's comments, there's a website, and I can send you a link, but it's the website looks at vehicle miles traveled. Warren counties at one point were down like 42% for 1 month that I looked at. Northern Virginia's were down about 70%. So it looks like the entire state to differing levels is impacted, and I think it's something that VDOT's going to have to look at, because I'm sure Northern Virginia is going to be screaming because,
Oh, yeah.
their big numbers are going to be a lot smaller. But definitely for us, the interstate miles traveled and the major routes, 340, 522, 55, those numbers are going to be significantly down, I would think.
Yep, definitely. One other thing I'll add is talking about missing the tourist traffic, and that's a question or a concern I got for years when I was with VDOT and involved in it. But what VDOT normally does try to do is take those counts during the middle part of the week, Tuesday to Thursday time frame. So it's a better average, and you don't have that influx on a weekend. I guess we would all like to see them count 55 in the middle of October when all that Shenandoah National Park traffic is on it. But again, that skews the data, so they do try to count in the middle of the week, so it's as accurate as possible.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Is VDOT and the Transportation Board still doing a physical review of the roads? I know that years past, they would take a ride around and take a review of the roads and consider, that was a consideration for input by localities.
I'm not sure I follow you,
Yeah.
What board are you talking
The
about?
Transportation Board, there was.
Commonwealth Transportation.
Yeah,
If there's a critical issue that comes up, it's certainly feasible for the Stanton District's Commonwealth Transportation Board member to come out with the VDOT staff and us to look at a project. But routinely, that's not on any sort of set schedule.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I have one more. On Route 619 with the detour, how is it, do you know how the traffic will be detoured off of 619 this coming week and what day it'll be?
I do not, Mr. Fox. I know enough about it to speculate. I know VDOT has a couple of pipes to replace on the Mountain Road section of 619. I've heard one of you say earlier about road names and route numbers. But I do know VDOT has a couple pipe out on that far western end out toward the fish hatchery.
Okay.
Between, say, the Steed Lane intersection and the fish hatchery out. I don't know, I can't remember the exact locations, but it'll be out on the western end where there's less traffic
Right.
than on the eastern
Okay.
end.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next report from the Department of Social Services. Deanna Cheatham. Good to see you, Deanna.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well, and it is very nice to see everyone, even if masked. I've submitted my report, but I'll also provide that information so that everyone can see it and hear it. To start off with vacancies, we are right now looking actually quite well, even in the midst of the pandemic. I have one family service position that's still vacant that we've received some applications on, and we'll be interviewing for that, as well as one benefit program specialist position. That benefit program specialist position was previously offered, but the offer was rejected, so we are now re-advertising for that position and looking at actually a second candidate. On the report, it indicates that there was a fiscal assistant position that had been offered. I'm happy to report that that position has actually been accepted, and that person will be starting on June 8th, so that will be very helpful. Currently, we have absolutely 0 staff that have tested positive for the virus, so that is very good news, especially considering that staff is still out and in the community. As far as COVID updates are concerned, we are seeing a steady decline in new applications for all programs, and the numbers that are indicated on the report still remain. I'll be getting a new report on Thursday in regards to what this week's amounts have looked like from Thursday to Thursday. Currently, since March 26, SNAP applications are at 275, Medicaid are at 163, child care are at 10, and TANF is at 27. So again, there's a steady decline in the number of applications that we've received from the very beginning when the very first week we received as high as 71, and we've seen, as low as single-digit numbers in some program areas. Family Services current cases, and this is something that, of course, is going to continue to be a concern. Our current CPS caseload is 77 with 45 new cases since March 1st. And you all may have already heard that there is great concern that we have these invisible children that because school's out, because Parks and Recs programs are closed, because churches are not necessarily having services and what have you, that there are children that are not being seen in the community in the manner in which they typically would be. So there's concern that we're going to see an influx of cases when we kind of return to the new COVID normal, so to speak. And so we're trying to prepare for that as much as we can with getting staff trained. The state has transitioned some of the training for Child Protective Services to web-based training. And of course, we're also always taking staff out so that they're getting that on-the-job training as well, because that's the best way for them to learn the children, the community, and the families. Foster care, you see that we have 18 children that are in care, and that 3 of those children have been new since March 1st, so since we kind of went into the pandemic here. So it made for some very interesting transitions when you're looking at, when you're typically going into a home and you're looking through the home and you're, meeting face to face with foster parents. It's very interesting when you're now doing these things through a face-to-face teleconference or non-face-to-face, a virtual teleconference. It makes it far different. It's not quite as personal, but we're still having to do everything that we can, including at times, especially for the CPS and APS complaints, having to go out face-to-face and having to go into the homes. And of course, like those 3 children that were removed, having to go into the homes and remove those children. Virginia was also approved to participate in the SNAP Online Purchase Pilot Program, and what that means is that people that receive SNAP benefits are now able to use either Walmart or Amazon. They are the only 2 platforms at this time to be able to purchase groceries online. Now, the only drawback to that is that the delivery fees or any other associated fees are not covered through SNAP, but the purchase of the food is covered through SNAP. So that is good news for people that don't want to venture into the stores or have food deserts, transportation issues, anything along those lines, that they are still able to receive food and nutritious food as far as that's concerned as well. That was scheduled to go live on this past Friday, May 29th, and so far I have not heard anything. I'm waiting for him to sneeze, and I will probably ruin it now that I've said that, but bless you in advance. But I've not heard anything about any glitches so far, so hopefully that's good news and that's rolling out well. Just so that everyone knows, the Ccap DSS drive-through food distribution to date, and this is including yesterday's deliveries, we have, and this is an updated amount than what's on your report, 216 people have been served. That is a total of 927 bags of food have been provided, and that includes food and toiletries that have been provided to residents in the community. Tomorrow, June 3rd, will be the last day of the joint distribution site over at DSS. Services will resume at Ccap's regular distribution, and Ccap will be updating their Facebook pages, website, and the radio as well to be able to get that information out to all Ccap clients. So we're very happy to have been able to provide, that many bags of food and toiletries, meat, bread, cheese, etc., and dog food and cat food as far as that's concerned as well to the community. Now, without that collaboration, those people would not have been able to access that. As of May 27th, the first 200 boxes of food that Mr. Mabe worked out with the food bank, all of those have been delivered, and another 200 boxes are scheduled to be delivered tomorrow morning. So that has worked out to be actually great in regards to people that can't necessarily get down for during our Ccap distribution hours. Those boxes are going on with the buses for the distributions for schools as well as into the community. Some of our local churches have been able to access some of those boxes, and that information is being sent back to the food bank so that we can continue to receive those additional boxes. Those boxes, if you have not seen, they have things like spaghetti and oatmeal, cereal, applesauce, some fruit in there. So it's enough to be able to make, a couple of days meal depending on the size of the family. Thermal shelter update. The thermal shelter has been extended for an additional 2 weeks at this point, and right now the shelter is definitely scheduled to close as of Tuesday morning, June 30th. So as of June 30th, the thermal shelter that is currently located at the Health and Human Service Complex will be closed as of the morning of June 30th. Just wanted to give a special thanks to a few restaurants that had come and provided lunch to the agency. Oftentimes we're not necessarily thought of. People see the folks in uniform. They don't necessarily see the people that aren't in uniform and providing services. So there are a few restaurants, Try Thai, Po Greens, and The Melting Pot, as well as our advisory board member, the DSS advisory board member, Brenda Wells, that supplied, I can't say enough about our snickerdoodles and our chocolate chip cookies, but just really wanted to say thanks for people for thinking about the agency and supporting my staff and realizing that we were also still working during this pandemic. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Do we have questions? Because I do have a couple, but any questions of anybody else so far? You said that the participation in the SNAP, you said that was working, it had started?
Yes, for the online program.
In the online program, and you said that you're not hearing anything bad.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay.
So I'm not hearing anything bad or good. I haven't received any
Do you know if it's
updates.
actually being used yet?
I don't as of yet, and likely it would probably be, I'm thinking, next week or this Friday, even perhaps before any numbers may potentially come out to say these are how many clients may have even used the service,
I mean, that's a
especially
good
considering the service is
opportunity.
limited.
I mean, that's a good opportunity for
Absolutely.
anybody that needs it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's true or not, completely true or not. If we had to get food to somebody and they got it through Walmart, we could probably find somebody to go pick it up if we had to, and they didn't have a way of doing that.
It's possible. It just kind of depends on what they're putting in. I know when you go to Walmart or even Target that you'd have to say if there's an alternate person that's picking it up. So there's likely some way to work around that. I'd need to check with Walmart and Target or what have you to see what information might they need, because we certainly don't want somebody picking up someone else's groceries. So we'd need to protect against that, but there's likely some way to be able to do that.
I hope there is, and I hope that it can at least be considered some way or another.
Absolutely.
Because we've got people in the community that's willing to stop what they're doing, go take care of a pharmacy need, a food
Absolutely.
need, whatever. I think that's important. Thank you. You had mentioned the food bank boxes, and I'm really proud of that. That's a good program that's worked for us. Will the deliveries still come to the DSS office or
The food bank boxes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and you'll continue to store those until we have to move them?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's good.
And we're actually, so some of the churches have reached out to the agency and have reached out to Michelle Smeltzer, my community liaison. So we want to make sure that people have access to that food. So we're also looking at delivering some of those boxes through, other means as well, being able to actually knock on people's doors and say, hey, we were contacted by whomever and here's your food box.
Yeah, there were 200 boxes of food, and I think that I have the last 6 to be delivered today.
Excellent.
So it's worked out really well.
And the next 200 will be delivered tomorrow.
Right, it's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all that I
Absolutely.
have. Anyone else have anything? Thank you. Our next report is for the Economic Development Group, Mr. Parsons.
Good morning. Thanks for your time. I just wanted to let you know that on our audits, our FY17 and 18 audits, as you know, we've contracted with Brown Edwards. They provided a list of the documents that they need to get started. Carolyn Stimmel and Gretchen in our office have been working very hard to get that list together, and they expect to have it done by the end of this week or early next week. And then once Brown Edwards gets that list, they'll be able to start doing the audit. They've also reached out to Yount, Hyde and Barber, our old auditor, to request any documents that they may have that they could supply us to help speed things along. As far as coronavirus business assistance, we have revitalized and restarted our old USDA loan program. We've gotten the application out there. We've done a press release to let the public know we are up and running again, and we're ready to accept new applications. We currently have 4 interested companies that I'm working with to see if we can get them some money to help them through the crisis. I would want to let the public know that we'd love to hear from other businesses who may be interested. Would be glad to help them through the application process, and anything that we can do to help them, we would love to do so. On our properties, we continue to work toward closing on the 514 East Main Street property, which is our apartments that we have. We're, I think, a survey away from closing. So we've got a local surveyor working on getting a survey specifically for that property. And once we get that, hopefully we'll be across the finish line there. Once we do sell the property, we'll be able to pay off a loan and put a little more of the remaining proceeds toward a second loan so that we can pay down some of of the taxpayers' debt. I'd also like to publicly thank the Warren County Department of Parks and Recreation Maintenance staff for their hard work out at the Stevens and Happy Creek Industrial Parks. They've cleared a lot of brush along the road so that one can see the Ball Drive building, the 426 Ball Drive building that we're trying to sell, much better. They've also cleared along the road frontage on the 53-acre lot across the street, and you can get a better feel for how that land lays now. I think it makes both those places a lot more marketable. Same at Happy Creek. When you drove out Progress Drive and you drive to the end and that cul-de-sac's out there, you can't really see the property. All you could see was autumn olive and scrub. But they've cleared a lot of that out now, and I've already taken some prospects out there, and it was obviously a lot easier to show them the property and let them see how the land laid. So I really appreciate all that hard work from those folks. Prospect activity does continue to be brisk as we have more interested parties in the Ball Drive building, the land at Stevens and Happy Creek, and also at Aftex. And toward that end, I've been in touch with FMC Corporation and the US EPA to determine a sale price that some of the prospects have asked for as it relates to the Aftex property. They've asked us to get a private appraisal on the Aftex property to help them determine a sale price or work with us toward determining a sale price. So I'll work with our board of directors as they've expressed interest in getting some appraisal values on some of our other properties as well. So we may be doing an RFP for some appraisal work. The VEDP's Business Ready Sites program, I know I've spoken a lot about this in the past with you all. That's the program to assign and hopefully increase the tier ranking for our different sites here in the county to make them more competitive. So I'm working with the Go Virginia Region 8 group to pursue grant funding for some of the due diligence work to increase our tier rankings. A lot of the work that we've done already for the rezoning of Happy Creek, which also works toward increasing the tier ranking, the money that we've spent toward that effort will bolster our application to get money through this grant fund. And if we do so, we'll be able to get, for instance, the archaeological studies, the ALTA surveys, the Phase 1 environmentals, those types of documents that we would need to get our sites up to Tier 3. And then, of course, as I've mentioned before, since we have the physical infrastructure in place at all of our sites, we should automatically go to a Tier 4. So hopefully we can get some money here and it'll help subsidize any future costs that we would have in developing the sites further. We've also applied for grant funds through the Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Council for a Startup Shenandoah Valley program, which would be a small business and entrepreneur incubator and accelerator program that would take advantage of the space that we have in Suite A at our offices. And this program is a structured course over 8 weeks that an entrepreneur would go through to help develop their idea and get it to market. And there are several partners involved at the Small Business Development Center and Lord Fairfax Community College, or would be involved if this thing takes off. The application was approved at the Go Virginia Region 8 Council, and it went to the State Department of Community and Housing Development last week for their review. And if it gets approved, it'll go to the State Go Virginia Board for their approval. We've already had a local IT company express interest in the space and in going through this program. And so I'm really excited about this. I think that if we can get this funding and if this program gets off the ground, it could be a good fit for some of our space over there. We're also working with Randolph-Macon Academy's Unmanned Systems program to produce a marketing video for the Ball Drive building and for our vacant properties at Stevens. Brian Kelly, who's the director of that program, was out yesterday, and he flew the drones through the office building and also out in the manufacturing area, and he's going to be able to produce basically a virtual tour of the building. So folks will be able to see online what the building looks like and hopefully spark more interest out there. He also reshot the exterior and flew around it. It was a beautiful sunny day yesterday, so we got some new footage going around the building. And then he's also flown the 53-acre parcel across the street for our future use if we would decide we would want to have video and cut and fill calculations over there. And then finally, Leech Run Parkway. DEQ has submitted their report regarding the remaining work that's needed to get the coveted notice of termination so we can finally close this project out. It has drug on forever, but they are out there this week. The contractor is out there, hopefully as we speak, replacing the sod and taking care of the work that needs to be done where there's been some erosion around the bioretention ponds and so forth. I spoke with the engineer yesterday, and he's optimistic that that the work that's being done will satisfy the DEQ as long as we get and keep enough water on the sod that's being put out there. The original plan was for sod in certain areas and seed in others, but it looks like the contractors have put sod in all of the areas, which is good because it's there. We just got to get it established and keep it watered, and so it actually grows and will satisfy the DEQ. So hopefully here in the next month or so, we'll be able to get DEQ back up and render a decision. So that's all I have. If you have any questions.
Questions from anyone?
Yeah, Mr. Parsons, who's responsible for watering?
Well, I believe the arrangement we have now is I think the town in the past has provided the watering services to keep the sod and everything going out there. And I believe that that's going to be the plan going forward. Although I will say, I understand from the engineer that a lot more sod was placed out there than what he had anticipated. So there may be a little more watering that we would be asking from the town. So I certainly don't want to speak for the town or imply that they should do more work than what they were obligated to. But generally speaking, it's the town who provides the watering, or has in the past at least, for that area.
And it's their road, so at the end of the day, they're the owner of the right-of-ways and the roads once we get everything closed out. So it's in their best interest, I think, to make sure it's done and maintained and kept up. They've been doing the mowing on the rest of the road.
Right. Absolutely.
Is the EDA still providing bills on a monthly basis to the town?
For the police department, we have been.
For other projects as well, because there are other
Right.
financial interests that the EDA has involved with the town, correct?
Right. For the West Main Connector project, we've been going through those invoices. We want to make absolutely sure that the only thing we bill anybody for, be it the town or the county, are verified legitimate expenses. And we're going through that process right now. And I have some questions about some of the invoices that I've seen. We've already verified that 3 of them cannot be substantiated. There's a couple other ones where the scope of the work is in question as it relates to whether or not it was truly for the West Main Connector or if it was for the IT federal project, the building and the 30 acres. We need to understand what each of those invoices are for before we put them on the list of what we feel we're entitled for reimbursement. So I've been working with Bowler and Pannoni Engineering to try to verify what that work was for. As it relates to the Leech Run and the older projects, we have not submitted an invoice to the town yet, but Carolyn Stimmel is working on that. She's also working on gathering the backup documentation for her calculations so that we know that what we're asking for, again, to the best of our knowledge, are legitimate reimbursable expenses.
Thank you. I know that's a tedious process.
Carolyn's been working very hard on that, so we appreciate her work.
Your business assistance program, that's the one where you have set up the loan committee to go ahead and do that work and make sure that everybody's qualified and get the applications done. I forget how many dollars that we're actually talking about and how you plan to break that up, or if there's a dollar amount and a dollar amount for the amount of loans or grants or whatever you're giving.
The parameters of the program that the Board of Directors and the Loan Committee work together to set indicate that loans will be available for between $5,000 and $15,000. We felt that keeping the loan amounts in that range, like so many other communities are doing, gives us the opportunity to spread the assistance out amongst more businesses. The total amount of money we have in the fund is around $360,000. I don't know if we'll lend out all of that money, but certainly the vast majority of it. There's been talk about keeping a little chunk in reserve in case certain projects come along. But all of these loans have to follow the USDA guidelines. So these are different from the SBA Paycheck Protection Program and CARES Act programs that are coming out, as these require some collateral, and there's going to be a credit check. So we have to follow the USDA guidelines in that regard.
One more question. On the collaborative efforts in the Go Virginia program that you've got. Space A, how many groups do you think could fit in that? And that, I know that that would depend upon the size of the group that would be interested in starting. But there's a lot of space there, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts, because it could be a one-man shop or a 10-man shop, we don't know.
It could be. I think Space A is very well laid out for the type of program that we're looking at here, because it's broken up into, I think there are 7 individual offices, and they're good-sized offices. You know, they're not just 10 by 12s, they're, you know, substantial. And then there's a nice big kitchen area. There's a room that can be used as a conference area, and another room that could be used kind of as a reception area. So I think the thing is laid out really well. For this program, I think we can only put 1 or perhaps 2 entrepreneurs per year through the actual program, the formal program itself. But that doesn't mean that we certainly can't also rent out space to other entrepreneurs. So we could have, I think, as many as 6 or 8 different entrepreneurs in there, 1 per office. But of course, you're going to have some folks who may want 2 offices or 3. But, you know, something in that neighborhood, I think we could have multiple folks in there.
Great. Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment, and Doug, thank you for recognizing the Parks and Rec maintenance guys. They're the ones that actually been doing the mowing. The Public Works Department are the ones that actually went out there and cleared off those lots. So I just want to thank Travis and the guys. I want to thank Travis and the guys from Public Works for the effort they put in.
Yeah, and that's, I should have mentioned too, the mowing, not only around our office building, but around all our properties. It's been immaculate since I've been here. So we really appreciate it. It helps it when we show.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Reports from our board members. Mr. Fox, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Mrs. Cullors?
Well, first, pull this down so people can hear me. Just want to wish all the graduating seniors from Skyline and Warren County, I know this has not been the graduation season that you had hoped for, but I've seen so many wonderful tributes to you that I hope in a small way that's making up until hopefully this fall when you can have a little more official graduation. But you guys have worked hard. Your parents are proud of you. We're proud of you. Also, I want to offer prayers for peace amidst all the turmoil that's going on across the country. I think we need to remember that it's much better to focus on working together for prosperity for all than destroying what we all work so hard for and what you need to sustain your life. Several board members and I met Mr. Fox, Mr. Mabe, and Mr. Stanley. We met down at the Morgansford Bridge a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot at the last meeting to say that, to look at some planned improvements for that area. I attended the Main Street opening up last weekend, had had supper down there. It was really nice, very nice atmosphere. Everybody was very congenial. It was just a nice evening. Attended the Memorial Day service at the courthouse, which again was very nice. Even if it was on a smaller scale due to COVID, it was still very nice. Continue to follow the progress of the Rivermont Fire Department. On Friday, Mrs. Oates and I spent our entire day doing certified supervisor training so that we can do the best we can to learn how to be supervisors for you. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Collins. Mrs. Oates?
Oh, I also attended the Memorial Day service to honor those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. It was very moving, even if with a small group, and I'd like to thank Mr. Chairman Mabe, who assisted with that and for his service as he helped and laid the wreath on the tomb. It was a wonderful service and a beautiful day. And after that, Miss Colors and I decided to go downtown and do the downtown rebound thing. And we had a great time visiting some of the business owners and talking to them about their concerns and the impact that COVID has had on local businesses, and we purchased a few things to kind of help people out down there. And so it was a great and beautiful day. Memorial Day was wonderful. And I will also remind everybody that this Thursday we're going to be working, Ms. Colors and I are going to be involved in the tourism decisions for the way tourism should proceed in our county and town, and we're looking forward to that. That's all I have, Chairman Mabe.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
No, it was pretty quiet in Happy Creek District, if you don't count the train derailment and the Manassas Run issue. The train derailment, I think, occurred Friday, and I think our County Fire and Rescue were there to just make sure that nobody was hurt, no material spilled. And of course, that falls back on the railroad to clean that up, and they're in the process, and if they're not finished already. The other ones that came into play too was the Sheriff's Department with traffic controls. They had to shut down 55 for a while so they get the equipment in there, build a temporary road, et cetera. And I'm sure Mr. Stanley may have some additional information on that. I guess I noticed on Facebook on the 27th or 28th, the Friends of the Shenandoah, they do periodic testing of the tributaries into the river and check for different things. And they found some high levels of E. coli, I believe, and they went back and traced it, and they did find the source. And again, unfortunately, I think that had to do something with the railroad putting in a culvert of some sort. And Manassas Run was pretty muddy down at the Morgan's Ford. I think right now it's cleared up, and there's really not much, if I understand, and Mr. Stanley can correct me, that there was really not much involvement from the county because this was something the railroad was overseeing, and the railroad has unlimited power basically to do what they want. But I understand too that DEQ has got involved with it, and they're researching it as well. And again, maybe Mr. Stanley in his reports, he can elaborate more on it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. And then make all of the boards, I mean, we're all making every effort to continue to keep the government running. Memorial service last week was a terrific moving day for me and for all of the people that were there. I also joined the festivities on Main Street twice to have lunch and visit some of the shops that were having stuff out so we could take a look at it. It was actually a good time. And that basically, other than the normal meetings that I go to every week, that's basically all that I have. If there's any questions from anyone, I'm happy to take them, and for any of our members about anything. Thank you. The next item on our, excuse me, Mr. Stanley, your report, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a few items. First, on coronavirus, last Tuesday, the county started its soft opening of the government center to To date, I don't think we've had any significant issues. We've put signs up encouraging mask use. We've got masks available for the public if they need them, but things have gone pretty smoothly. I anticipate through the remainder of this week that traffic will pick up with tax due date on the 5th. But a lot of people seem to be utilizing either mail or the drop box or paying online or the drive-through. So we encourage those alternative methods. But if you need to come in, the government center is open. We've got the building inspections entrance open so they can socially distance down the hall and get to the treasurer's office. Next Monday, June 8th, we are still in process of planning to transition to opening the other offices here and in other facilities. We're currently installing plexiglass dividers in some areas to accomplish separation between staff and customers. In regards to coronavirus vulnerable revenue, in review of April collections, the county collected $37,299.62 in meals tax. That amount was down 54% from the $80,224.58 collected in April of 2019. Lodging tax collected was at $86,1376, which is down about 46% down from the $17,898.62 from April of 2019. Given the forced closures, and that's the first full month of the coronavirus impact, I still think the numbers were a positive sign, and look forward to seeing it once we hit phase 2 and things are able to start coming out, how that's going to be impacted. Again, the fortunate part is the sales tax numbers were up, so hopefully they'll stay up and help offset some of those losses. Government Center telephone system, as the board knows, we lost our telephone system at the Government Center on the evening of May 19th, right before our board meeting. I want to thank Tim Grant, Warren County Public Schools IT Director, and Brandy Ross, our General Services Director, for their efforts in helping us get bids, get a contract awarded, get the new system up and running in a little over a week. And we also want to thank ACOM, our local vendor, for their efforts. And we are filing an insurance claim, and we'll see how that pans out. We had an electric surge that caused the system to go out. As Mr. Carter mentioned, I do want to touch on the Manassas Run issue. Let me first say, I want to thank Norfolk Southern. I'm talking with the Sheriff's Office. Norfolk Southern, their response team was phenomenal as far as getting out and getting the train cleared up and getting the situation remedied with the derailment. We appreciate their quick attention to that and to getting the rail line and everything else associated with it back up and running. County staff from building inspections joined with staff of the Friends of the Shenandoah and DEQ to investigate an erosion complaint that caused significant amount of silt-laden water to contaminate Manassas Run from the Linden area down to the Morgan Forward boat landing, where it ties in with the Shenandoah River. The ultimate cause of the discharge looks like it was the draining of a pond on private property adjacent to the railroad. DEQ is following up on the investigation. If it truly is a railroad related, it is exempt from any local permitting control. If it was an agricultural use, it would be exempt from local control, but there are still state guidelines that dictate what you can and can't do, and it potentially the property owner and or railroad, I guess, could be fined by DEQ, but they're handling the further investigation. As Mr. Carter said, the creek has cleared up. I still believe, if you remember during the budget process when the Friends came in, they talked about doing some additional sampling to try to determine the E. coli outbreak, and they'll be back here retesting as soon as they'll give the week another week or so to kind of clear up and go back out and see if the E. coli levels are still high or not. But they've been in touch with us on that issue. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions.
Mr. Stanley, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Can you explain to what happened at the Sheriff's Department with the phone system there that was out?
So the Century, as far as I understand, the CenturyLink trunk line that serves that part of town and the PSB was taken out by some type of construction activity. Nobody's been able to identify. I saw an email from the interim town manager. It apparently was not town staff, and nobody. We've checked our inspections. We have no permits in the area for any construction activity. So basically, they had to rebuild the fiber line that connects to the public safety building. thanks to, Rappahannock County, our 911 calls were routed through Rappahannock, and the admin calls were routed through the Front Royal Town Police Department building. But as far as I know, everything's back up and running as of yesterday, and hopefully should be taken care of.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And hopefully they can find out who or what caused the...
Exactly, because I was concerned that if they didn't know what caused it, how we could prevent it or,
Well,
be proactive.
obviously, anybody digging is supposed to call Miss Utility, and if you don't, you can be fined and charged, and you're liable for that. So,
Right.
we'll hopefully ultimately be able to find out who potentially caused it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Anyone else for Mr. Stanley? Thank you, sir. Mr. Ham, our county attorney.
Mrs. Jordan has asked me a question about item I-7 with respect to a possible issue that I'm not able to resolve right now, and there's no harm in pulling this from the agenda and acting on it at the June 16th meeting. And so she and I would like to make that request, that item I-7 be deferred until the June 16th meeting.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
No, sir.
Next item, is Mr. Farrell to talk about the COVID-19.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As of last Friday, the 29th of May, all Virginia localities entered Phase 1 of the governor's transition plan. The governor still estimates that the earliest that localities could begin to transition to Phase 2 would be this Friday, the 5th of June. We have no further information on Phase 2 at this time, but based on the numbers that we're seeing, it could be up to another 2 weeks, maybe less, before we go into Phase 2. Throughout the Commonwealth, there are 328,889 total tests. That's the PCR test, the lab-based result testing that has gone on. We have 46,239 cases in the Commonwealth with a 11.5% positive rate over 7 days. That 11.5% positive rate is the number they're watching carefully. We think when it gets down to 10%, that is the major metric the governor's looking at to go to Phase 2. We've got 4,770 that have been hospitalized and 1,407 deaths throughout the Commonwealth. Locally, here in the Lower Fairfax Health District, Clark County is up to 28 cases, Frederick is at 371, Page is at 230, Shenandoah 465, the city of Winchester is at 196, and Warren County is at 166 as of this morning. Total cases are 1,456 throughout our district. And those numbers for us will likely change once those numbers from the jail get entered in. That is the update that I have for this morning. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there any additional deaths for Warren County?
We are still at 2 attributed to the county and 14 hospitalizations. Somebody that's been in and released, but just 2 right now on the deaths.
Can you make any comment on RSW jail right now as to what's going on there?
Right now, I know
That problem?
the superintendent should be releasing a press release sometime soon, and we have another conference call this afternoon to discuss the way forward from the test results.
Any additional questions?
I have. I realize that, we've started Phase 1 of opening up, with Phase 2, hopefully Friday, who knows. What is our plan of, we're prepared. You've done a wonderful job of, getting the supplies we need, getting the information out. Now, where is the focus on safely opening up and getting things moving, because especially after hearing, 50% and 46% down on meals and lodging, I'm concerned now as much as the health of the individual as the health of our economy and is this going to end up wiping out Main Street, a lot of our small businesses especially. So where are we as a group working towards safely starting the progress of getting this thing rolling and getting open on that end?
Well, right now, our best guess that we've had for several weeks now was that the earliest we would begin to open would be June 8th. But that's all predicated upon moving to Phase 2. Unfortunately, the details that we know about Phase 1 from the executive order are not made public by the governor yet, so we have no pre-read into what Phase 2 is going to look like, so we can do that planning.
Okay, so there's no guidelines out preemptive of, I would think if there was a possibility that we were going to open on June 5th, they should have sent something out a week or two ahead of time to let people get their ducks in a row, so to speak, and they haven't done that. They're just giving dates.
We do not have that data right now. I mean, the best thing we've seen from Phase 2 is we think it'll go to the number 50 for gatherings, but still subject to social distancing, wearing masks, and all those things. Once the executive order is updated, all of those details will be there, and I don't think it will take us too long to react to make a movement that way. And then we'll have Mr. Bell come back and we'll update the conversation with everyone relative to the new executive order.
Where, if, and this is just, the thought in my head of, if business had said, or we as a town and county said, this is ridiculous, we need to let people be a free nation here and open, where does that put us financially with reimbursements and stuff? Is there any punitive action on the state's part of saying, you're not following, you don't get reimbursements?
That I could not comment on. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all
Good questions, by the way. Any additional comments or concerns, questions?
How long, so we're in a state of emergency, and we can pull back on the state of emergency, or is that also directed by the governor?
The governor has amended his declarations to where there really is not an end date right now for the state of emergency in the Commonwealth. We locally have an open-ended state of emergency as well, and it's at your direction as to when we terminate that declaration.
But if we terminate the state of emergency, does that terminate reimbursement funds? Say we terminate our state of emergency and then we get a big flare-up. Can we reenact that to get more PPEs and things like that if we had a huge episode that we needed more supplies for?
Well, we could always redeclare, but I would not recommend terminating our local emergency until the governor.
It's a question,
Yeah. I mean, we can always go back and do it again.
The possibility of then being too late.
Well, but it's just a question I've had asked to me, so I'm going to ask it, Don't ask, you don't know.
I think between, county and what we've given out, and also with like the jail, what we're burning through in PPE has been pretty constant as far as utilization and purchasing, resupply, those types of things. If we were to say it ends June 15th and we'll wait and restart, it makes it more difficult for us to be
Right.
able to go back to FEMA for.
And I understand that, but these, like I said, these are questions I'm
Good
getting
questions.
at me, and so I'm asking it so that if there's an answer, do we get it? If there's not, I can say I ask.
So right now, because we are still under a state of local emergency, I have been able to put into the WebEOC system to get, I'll say, free PPE back from the state, especially now with some of the emergent requests due to the outbreak at the jail. And heaven forbid, if we ever have an outbreak in a nursing home, we're going to want to be able to go to that resource to get those, to get that PPE. Right now, what VDEM is trying to do is if a locality, because of an unforeseen circumstance like an outbreak, has an emergent PPE need identified as 7 days or less, they're pretty good. If they have it on hand, they're going to ship it to us for free.
Okay.
Right.
I have another question. Yeah, so the numbers that you gave us for Warren County, 166, and that's cumulative over 8-9 weeks?
That is the
9
total
weeks.
reported, right.
So active cases, we could say maybe are 25% of that number? Or is there a way to gauge what active cases are? Because people recover. So my concern is that the recovery numbers are never calculated into this algorithm. And we continue to use a cumulative algorithm, which leads people to a different conclusion than maybe they should make.
Correct. I think because we don't have an army of contact tracers that can follow me if I had it all the way through, knew when I was healthy again, and now they take me off of that list, right?
Right.
We just don't have, the health department does not have the contact tracers available to get to that depth of data. So I think for us, in the question that Mr. Mabe asked about the number of hospitalizations and deaths, that is a good number for us to look at because out of the 166, only 14 have been sick enough to have been hospitalized, so we can assume that the rest have recovered, right?
Or they're in-house quarantined themselves by doctor's orders. So, I mean, there's more to it than just the 14 that are hospitalized and the 2 deaths. There's people that are just starting and getting into their 14-day cycle of being better. And they've got to be able to look at their temperature to make sure that it's going down. And if all of these factors are working, we know that they're getting better. If not, they're going to be going back to the doctor and then possibly getting hospitalized. So there is a lot going on just for the numbers that we have.
Yet the 14 is also cumulative over
Correct.
this 9-week period.
So
So we
there's
can
not
assume that there
14.
may be 2 or 3
Right.
out of those who might still be hospitalized. I just think the
Right.
numbers do not clarify the situation as it really is. And that concerns me because I don't want people to have the wrong impressions on the numbers that we distribute every day.
Correct. And
Yes.
I guess what I would ask or plea for folks' understanding is because of the magnitude of this is the best data that VDH is able to give us at this time.
Sure, and I understand. I think sometimes it just takes the discussion and the clarification on our part to say, don't overreact at these numbers because they're cumulative
Right,
and not, the status that it would be this week perhaps.
right. Well,
Okay.
the good news is at least today,
We're in
until
good
the jail
we're
numbers hit,
trending good.
we're looking very well in the
Yeah, we're
health
trending
district.
very, very good, yes.
Yeah, minus Clark County, which is, they're doing great. But we're number 2 right now, so
Yep,
in the best position.
No.
thank you, Mr. Fick.
Anyone else? Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Farrell. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be pulled for further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item number 2 for discussion.
Number 2,
I'd like to pull number 3, number 6,
You got to take number 7 off, too.
Correct.
yes, it's already been done.
okay. I thought Mr. Hammond, but number 7's.
Well,
good.
yeah, I'm not a board member, so no, you need to take that action.
Okay, number 7 as well then, if Mr. Carter didn't.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended with items number 2, 3, 6, and 7 removed? Or open for discussion, and number 7 being removed.
So moved.
Okay,
Is there a second?
second.
Any further discussion at all? Could we get a roll call, please, Emily?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Mabe?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 2, we'd like to discuss. That's the proposed hangar lease increase for 2020 and 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I ask this for this to be pulled because we have received a concerning letter. And I think that also that I'd like to see this discussed at a meeting. We haven't been able to have an airport meeting recently, so I'd like for us to have a meeting at the Airport Commission to possibly discuss this before we move forward.
Okay, so we just basically want it completely removed.
Pardon me?
We want it completely removed.
Tabled. We want it tabled.
We want it tabled until we get a meeting with the Airport Commission, correct?
That's what I would propose, sir.
The only question is, I think in that letter or memo we got, they're getting, I think the contracts, lease contracts run from July 1.
That's correct.
So they were trying to get something set up prior to letting those contracts. So is there any way that the Airport Commission can meet virtually or something prior to our next meeting on the 16th?
Well, in lieu of contract, it's actually just a lease increase that
Right.
goes effective July 1st to June 30th of each year.
Basically, the least increase that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, and typically in years past, what the board's done, when approving it, we usually go through this process in the April-May timeframe, so we can get letters out to all the leaseholders that there will be and what the amount of the increase is effective July 1. So our Airport Commission meeting at the end of March was, of course, canceled due to the COVID restrictions. So what I did was emailed all of the airport commissioners and either communicated with them via email or by phone on what their desires was for the lease. And the consensus of the 5 members was that we proceed with the increase. So that's where we're at today.
So, as you said, you already have a consensus that they've been in agreement with. So is there any need to meet with them again?
Well, I would prefer some open discussion of why we need the increase on these items.
I agree with Mr. Fox. The email we received had enough concerns there that I think a meeting would be appropriate to address those before, because this was one of the concerns that was in that
And
email as well.
That was a concern of the letter in the letter that I received.
But you said that you spoke with all the members?
I've spoke with all the Airport Commission members. I believe the letter they're referring to came from a hangar
Yeah.
tenant or a leasee.
Right.
Correct?
That is correct.
So did you speak with Mr. Childers regarding this as an Airport Commission?
I haven't spoke with Mr. Childers yet, but I've just decided that I wanted to have a meeting, be part of a meeting, Airport Commission meeting, because we haven't able to have a meeting because of this COVID-19 in the last few months.
But you're on that board,
Yeah, I am on that board.
and you didn't talk to him?
Yes.
Yeah, we did initially talk,
Okay.
but there's something else that has come up that I'm concerned about that's relative to this, because it was requested in that meeting, that letter, not to increase the fees.
No, it's fine. I just didn't know if we want to try to get this completed by our next meeting to approve. Can you set up a virtual meeting?
Yeah.
we
I
can
mean, that
work
would
to
be
do
what I
that.
suggest, to try to set up a virtual meeting
We can work to do that.
for those that need it.
Yeah, I understand Mr. Childers has talked to him, but Mr. Fox has not, correct, Mr. Fox? You
What's
have
that
not
now?
talked to these commissioners individually, these people in the Airport Commission yourself.
No, I haven't spoke with any of them.
Right, and so that's his concern, is he wants to speak to people as well, I think.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
guess the motion is to table
I second that.
Is that to the 16th?
Yeah,
That's
can you
the
do
next
that by
voting
the, can you do that by the 16th?
I'll certainly do my best, if nothing more than a
Mr.
conference
Fox,
call.
can you help to get that happen by the 16th?
We'll work on it.
Okay. And on the 16th, Emily, would you put that on the agenda? And if it doesn't happen by then, we'll continue to move it out. Thank you.
Okay, we need to have a vote on the tabling motion and second?
Do we need to change that motion that was originally placed?
I think
Call
it
for
was
question.
to table generally and then to table until the 16th of June. And I
And
think
Miss, I made the motion to table it until the 16th, and Miss Culler seconded it, and now we just need an all in favor note.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ham.
You're welcome.
The request from Warren County Public Schools for personal funding for delivery of student meals during the coronavirus pandemic. Melody Shepard or her representative.
Mr. Chairman, and I've got Mr. Smith and Mr. Mitchell from the school system here. Buck is HR director, and he's filling in for Melody, who has another meeting, and Aaron, of course, runs transportation. In your packet, you have a letter from Warren County Public Schools requesting funding for FY 2021 to continue providing delivery of meals to children in remote parts of the county for the months of July and August while school is out during the COVID-19 crisis. Warren County Public Schools bus drivers are contracted through June 5th through this Friday. If Warren County Public Schools continues food delivery, now they could still do the pickup like at E. Wilson, but if they continue the delivery out via buses, they'll need to pay their drivers for time work starting June 8th. Warren County Public Schools has stated they're able to cover the costs for the remainder of June due to anticipated savings in the current budget. The estimated cost per month to extend the service is $8,736. The total request for July and August is $17,472. According to Deputy Emergency Manager Rick Farrell, the county could use its CARES Act funding to fund the request. And I think it indicated it would not qualify for the FEMA reimbursement. But with that, Buck, anything you'd like to add?
No, that pretty well covers it. Thus far, through our transportation, through our buses, we've served roughly around 48,000 meals. And a meal would consist of a breakfast. A student could come up and get a breakfast and a lunch, so that would go as 2 meals. And so through the transportation system, we have served many more than that because we have a couple areas where they can drive by to pick the food up and those type of things. So we'd like to continue to do that. I do believe there continues to be a need with that. And Mr. Mitchell is here as well. And Ms. Shepard has a meeting with the state superintendent. So we're just here on her behalf. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up, Rick came back. He had a follow-up email from FEMA. He said it may qualify for FEMA, so that's something that we would continue to look at. FEMA, of course, would reimburse 75% if we took that route for funding versus using CARES Act funding. So we have potentially
You have two outlets.
two options.
So we're basically funding the school system, and then once we get these programs established, whether it be FEMA or whether it be CARES Act, we can then get either reimbursed 75% or
100%.
reimbursed all of it.
Yes, sir.
So we will, if we approve it, we will get our money back, or the county will get its money back. Any additional questions for Mr. Mitchell or for Mr. Smith, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You have the funds to fund this through the end of June, you said. So if we moved this to June 9th to discuss it, to give us time to figure out what were the CARES Act or FEMA, that's not going to put you in a hardship position.
I do not believe so, because Mr. Mitchell would be arranging the drivers, and I think we're comfortable with.
I think my biggest concern with that would be we're a little nervous right now anyway, trying to retain those drivers. And so there would be that uncertainty that if they don't feel comfortable that they're gonna have a job in July and August, they're just gonna go somewhere else. That would be my only.
How many buses, I was trying not to drag this out, if we could go to June 9th and discuss it and have all that information, because, there's no how many buses, how many people, that kind of thing. Five?
5 buses, 10 drivers. Each one of the drivers, it's 5 actually physically driving. The other driver is actually an assistant / aide. They're lugging massive coolers of milk. And then it's a process that they work as a good team. And the reason we use drivers for all those positions, not just an aide, but they also serve as a substitute in the event that somebody does become sick. And they stay in that team, so nobody's mixed up. So it's really easy to track if we do have any of this.
Okay.
And those drivers also have some of the boxes to feed the families as well. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to talk out of school, but y'all correct me if I'm wrong here, we're seeing about 600 young people every time that we go out.
Oh, I think it's a very worthwhile program. I'm just concerned over total revenue, where we are, hearing that our sales taxes, our meals taxes, lodging taxes are coming down. We have to look at our finances as well. That is my concern, and that was why, I know it's on our agenda here to discuss the relief and, all that stuff, so I would just be personally a little more comfortable knowing where we are by June 9th, but whatever, however everybody else feels on this.
But it seems like to me it's going to be reimbursed, as they've said already, either by CARES by 100% or by FEMA at 75%. And if we were going to proceed today, which I would suggest we do, we could maybe amend the written motion to say such funding to come from the COVID-19 response funding or from FEMA reimbursement. And in that way we have time. It's not like we're not going to get this money back.
Well, I wouldn't want to delegate money out of the CARES Act yet until we figure out exactly. That's part of my thing, but
And I would echo that. I think if we can use FEMA, we probably would say,
Right.
let's try to go to that pot to maximize the return back to the
Right.
community.
Well, the CARES Act would maximize our return
Well,
if we're getting 100%
you're going to
back.
get the CARES Act funding, depending on how the split works, that you would be able to bring that extra 75% back to the community on the other
Right.
part. But you're right, but as far as total dollars in pocket, it may work better to apply for FEMA for the reimbursement.
But you get to FEMA at
CARES Act or
75%,
something
and you might get the 25% from the CARES Act.
Yes.
So ultimately, you do still get reimbursed
Still get your
100%.
dollars.
Yep.
One is just immediate, the other one is
12, 18 months.
12,
Right.
18 months.
Right.
But
Okay.
getting our dollars back, I think, is what you're concerned with, and I believe that with either one of those programs, we're covering that. So do we have a motion on this?
I move that the Board of Supervisors approve the request of Warren County Public Schools to approve funding in the amount of $17,472. Such funding to come from the COVID-19 response funding or in conjunction with FEMA reimbursement.
Second.
Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Mabe?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, amend the annual term contract for Labella Associates. Caitlin, or Mrs. Jordan, my apologies.
That's fine. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The county's contract with Labella Associates, formerly known as Joyce Engineering, to perform and provide professional environmental and engineering services at the Warren County Closed Landfill, Warren County Transfer Station, and county-owned facilities and/or county projects is set to expire on June 30th, 2020. Labella Associates has provided satisfactory services and performed well under the contract. The contract contains a renewal option that provides for 4 additional one-year terms. Pursuant to the renewal option, a proposed amendment to the contract would extend the contract for another one-year term. This renewal will leave one-year term renewal. The current renewal would begin January 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has, and I know Mike Berry is also here to answer questions regarding Labella.
Okay, I pulled this because I don't feel like I know Joyce Engineering has been doing this, or Labella Associates, but this contract doesn't give me what we're paying them, or I feel like I've got a blank check here, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
It's not a blank check. If you'll give me one moment to consult the original contract. The county pays Labella based on the fees included in the scope of the professional environmental services, and it's based on a professional rate schedule. They submit monthly invoices, and might be able to answer this better than I can, but it is not a blank check. I mean,
Okay,
there
and
is
do
an invoice
we-
process in place.
Do we do a bidding process with this, even though they've been doing this and put this out for bid for other companies?
This contract went through the procurement process back in 2017. They were the winning bid. The contract came before the Board of Supervisors who were sitting at the time. They approved the contract. That contract had the renewal terms that allowed the county at its option to renew the contract for 4 additional years. Currently, we've had 2 renewals. The second renewal will expire May 30th of this year. So the contract leaves us with 2 additional renewals. At the end of, if the 2 additional renewals are approved by the county, then at that point, the contract will go back out to bid. So currently, the contract, as it sits, has gone through the procurement process as required by the Virginia Code.
So this contract has expired.
You said May 30th,
You said
so
you
it's,
said
No,
May 30th.
June 30th.
oh, okay.
Thank
No,
you.
it expires June 30th. I apologize if I
Okay.
misspoke. So we have some time before this,
Okay.
the current amendment expires.
How much did we pay them last year?
That I won't be able to give you a number. I'm not part of the billing process. I don't know if Mr. Berry has that exact amount, but I can definitely look into that and get the number.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was underneath the projected budget for the year. I'm thinking like in the 170 range, but I can find that number easily. In the budget that you approved for the next fiscal year, what I do each year is speak with the engineer or the project manager and get them to break down each task for me and what we anticipate, based on groundwater monitoring, corrective action, case reports, landfill gas remediation, any environmental engineering or basic engineering tasks that we may need them for. So each year I have a breakdown. So if I'm anticipating $100,000 work for the year, then that's what we budget, or that's what I request from you. If it's more, then I would request more. If we know that we have a upcoming project, I've talked to you about some of our groundwater issues in some other meetings. So all of that work is included in that budget for the year. Basically, we'll pay them on an hourly rate. We'll pay them if there's a field meter used for turbidity or whatever it may be, there's a rental rate, and Caitlin has a sheet that tells you if it's a senior engineer, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think most of them are like $100 to $140 an hour for a senior engineer. If it's a field person, they might get paid $60 an hour to come out if they're actually doing sampling or something like that. So each person, there is a rate for each person, and we do project and we look at it each year and see what we're going to accomplish. There's a lot of things that I have to do. You've already voted on the financial assurance, as you realize that's a requirement that we have to have. With our case reports, we have monthly reports that are due to the state, the DEQ, quarterly reports that we have to do, semi-annual reports and annual reports. And all of those pieces of the puzzle, they're involved in, so they are hands-on. So, like, I couldn't just say, hey, I do have to have some help. We don't have the staff to do all of the testing and all of the monitoring that is required, you know, and then there's laboratory behind it. They take care of that, making sure, ensuring those samples are secure, that they meet all the standards, temperature, et cetera, when they go to a laboratory. So there's a whole lot of things that they do from the bottom to the top, all the way through. We also have, I mentioned in our little brief presentation, our groundwater extraction treatment system. You know, we do what we can there, but it's an engineered system where we are actually cleaning water there. I mean, they also take care of that. It's got a whole lot of bells and whistles. And the extraction, we do, when we discharge that, they monitor that as well. So it's a pretty, I mean, I can give you it'd take all day to try to explain every piece of the puzzle, but you saw all the candy canes and the tubes and the vents. If you've been up there lately, you've seen we recently worked on some additional gas extraction work, you know, where we've expanded our system, you know, and that's in our normal monthly budget. So our normal budget that we put before you is where the costs come from. When we put it out, we had multiple proposals, and we sat down and interviewed, I think, and I'd have to go back a couple of years, but I believe we interviewed 3 firms. And they had a great history and knowledge here. They have performed well in my time here for the county. And I'm not saying the other companies or engineering firms were not, you know, well suited. I mean, some of them work in neighboring jurisdictions. But overall, I mean, they really know what has been here. They have a lot of our stuff. They have actually been in here during the installation. They've got people who have long-term relationship with the county. So that really gives them a lot more knowledge than many of the other firms. But, you know, in the future, you know, we look at what the price is when we put it up to bid. You know, engineer to engineer, what can they provide? Where are they at? How long does it take to respond? You know, all those things we do look at.
When did you give them this original contract?
2017.
Yeah.
It was signed in June of 2017.
And since then, you haven't had it rebid to make sure that they're still as competitive as they were when they won the contract? You've just
Well, the price
given...
has not changed. I mean.
Well, the price may
rates,
not have changed
yeah.
with them, but has it changed in another spot or with another company?
Not typically, no. I mean, the engineering firms are very similar across the board in their rates. You know, and they get down to personnel, you know, independent. I mean, one engineer might charge 40 for a field person, and one might charge 50, or engineer, but they're very competitive across the board. You know, and there's not a lot of engineering firms in the state that focus on just solid waste. So most of your firms are solid waste specific that are going to apply for this. There's only a handful of firms in the state of Virginia.
How many people actually come out and do the testing? I mean, are we talking about 10 different people, or are we talking about one person?
No, it just depends on the project. Like this morning, I saw 2 people at the landfill. They were working on a monitor down there. You know, if you have a senior engineer come, he might be coming and meeting, groundwater specialist from DEQ and having an on-site meeting to determine what's happening with the groundwater. You know, we're seeing spikes in the data, looking at a location because there's requirements for wells and drilling. So they're going to coordinate with DEQ. They're going to coordinate with the well drillers and to make determinations. They're going to get together with land surveyors at time to make sure that, you know, we're within our boundaries and all those points are marked, because it's very scientific. And sometimes, you know, I feel like we're just shooting at holes in the ground, but, you know, there's a lot of requirements of law as we go through it.
I understand that there's a lot going on, but
Right.
I would, unless somebody disagrees with me, I would like to see how much money it's actually costing us, or it's actually cost us over the last several years. And
Right.
it's not that I think that they're messing with their pay or their people or whatever.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I understand that I'm going to, I or the
Right.
the
Well,
board
I
here is
mean-
gonna commit to another $170,000. And we don't know exactly what that number is, and I get that.
Right.
But a little bit of history would tell us what our future may be.
So, Mr. Maybe, if I can add something, I understand contracts, and so what you guys have orchestrated is typical in the government, which is a 5-year, it's a first-year contract with 4 option years, and then what you do is you're giving them indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery, IDIQs are what they call them in the federal market. So basically, you give them task orders every year, and then they give you what they charge for each of those tasks. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Am I summarizing that
very-
in a
Very similar.
similar way that they do in the federal space?
They're not going to do anything. I mean, if we're doing something like our, tip and floor or something we're going to require more time, I mean, that's not going to be a typical year. I mean,
Right.
we've only done that one time, and that's in the last 2 years. That
So you have
project.
indefinite quantities. You don't know what you're going to use them for
Right.
until you have
But,
circumstances.
I can give you, we have a basic, we know what we're going to have to sample, we know what we're going to, we know the quantity. of
Standards.
sample. Yeah, standard. And those things we have to do.
Right.
I can't stop doing those
Right.
things. If there's something, a project that we don't want to do, I mean, they don't push something upon us, and say, hey, you have to do this today. I mean, we have things that we have to do. If I said, hey, I don't want you tomorrow, I mean, they would stop work, but, I mean, we would end up getting in trouble because I'm not meeting the requirements of law for the state of Virginia. But I do look at dollars and cents, and they are a company that's been very easy to deal with. If I've questioned something, not a problem. If I say, hey, I want to wait till next fiscal year, or let's put this off, I've many times I've said, I'd like to, put this off as long as we can. As long as we can. We want to be responsible to our people, and as we always, health is number one, I told you that before, but we want to do this and make sure we're going above and beyond to make sure that budgetarily we can handle it, and we want to do it, we want to be secure in health, but we also want to always watch the numbers and make sure that we're getting what we're paying for, and don't want to blow up the budget at any time. So, I understand what you're saying, Mr. May. And I have no trouble reaching out and looking at but I really do not feel, I have talked to others in the surrounding jurisdiction. Some have a preference on the company, but monetarily I have been told, and I don't want to put anyone down. But, dollars and cents, I mean, I've never had any of them that have used in the surrounding jurisdiction complain about being gouged by the company that we're using. Others I've heard different things, and I'm not the type of person that just take that as fact, but I have heard other things, sometimes escalation, and, I'd be concerned if I saw that.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Appreciate
Sir.
it. Additional questions, concerns?
So I understand the contract thing now, because, that did concern me. I would say, depending on whichever way we go today, that next year would be their last year of the 4-year re-op, that, because we're down to the wire June 30th here, that we have that information for us and put it out to bid, and just so that we have that information as well. It just gives us a comparison. It's, not saying they probably very well could come out on top and, just renew it, but
And I'm not
It's
I'm
just-
just letting you know, history and what I've seen. And
oh, absolutely.
requirements. And I can give you a budget, like I said, they're one of the, the few things that I actually have. Hey, send me for the year, I'm getting ready to do my budget. Send me, what our basic tasks, they'll break them down in our basic tasks. And I can give you a copy of what I used for next year's budget. So groundwater corrective action, groundwater is our biggest problem that we have. And we're an old municipal unlined landfill. And what we're trying to do is make sure nothing goes off that site, which, is virtually impossible.
Good.
But that's our most expensive task. So, we mentioned a residential well, that's a task that, it just depends on when that would happen. So you could be talking about, little wells going with that, you might be looking at $35,000 or $40,000 that we might not have to spend immediately, but, you know, eventually it just depends on, you know, what's happening in the ground. So sometimes, you know, what's happening really affects what's happening with the migration.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mike.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
My wheels are still turning here.
Okay.
If anybody else wants to,
I move that the Board of Supervisors authorize the county administrator to execute the amendment to the contract with Joyce Engineering in accordance with the renewal option in the contract, to extend it for a one-year term of July 1st to 2020 to June 30th of 2021, but with the caveat that we would like to put this out for proposal for 2021 before we have to execute the next option year.
Just a note, on the motion itself, there's the word "not" in there. Want to remove that?
No, I read the one above it,
First one.
to authorize the
Okay,
county
my
administrator to
my
execute the
apologies, you're
amendment. Yeah,
correct.
not the alternative.
My
one.
apologies. Thank you.
Okay,
and I'll second that
yeah.
with the addition that she mentioned.
Any concerns?
The only thing would be, I don't know if we have to actually put it out for bid, because that'll give us the 5th year, but certainly to look at it and evaluate sooner than June. So that's the only one concern I have with that motion, that we make it known that, you know, because we may come back and do it. The other thing, I guess, when you put it out for bid, you could work both ways, because right now, we've got the set cost from the company, and that kind of gives the competitors a little bit of an edge too, because they already know what we're paying. And there again, they may lowball it. The other thing, lastly, in the motion you read, it says Joyce Engineering Incorporated. Should it not be Labella Associates?
I think it's also Joyce Engineering Incorporated, right?
Or formerly known as that?
They were formerly known as Joyce Engineering. It should be Labella Associates. That is their current name.
Okay,
I apologize for that.
okay. So the motion should be amended to execute the amendment to the contract with Labella Associates,
DCP.
DCP, PC.
MOUSE.
And do you want to add a rebid? I mean, you just.
Yes, I would like a review of this contract next year in some fashion.
I'll make a note so we can put it on the agenda sooner than now to give the board time to consider.
Yeah, earlier
Prices.
than when it's in the last 30-day period.
Correct. Do we need to second?
Yes.
I'll second the,
All right, thank you. Any other concerns?
Does Ms. Sirachi know what the motion was?
Yes.
Explain it to me. No, we're good.
Ms. Sirachi, could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
aye.
Mr. Mabe?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Item number 7 has been already removed and put on the June 16th meeting, correct, Mrs. Sirachi?
So we're at J.
Was
Thank
there a
you.
formal motion to that effect?
Yes.
No,
I don't think
I
so.
don't think that we did. a
We
formal
removed it.
Correct.
Ms. Cullors
Part of the
included
consent
that in
agenda
her
motion.
motion.
Correct.
I thought it was part of this consent agenda to remove it to discuss, but I didn't think we made it formal, but it doesn't matter.
I'm,
You verify that, Ms. Sirachi? I believe that we made the motion to move it to,
Yes, so
June
what I
16th.
put down in my minutes is Mr. Fox requested the removal of item 2 for further discussion, and Ms. Cullors requested the removal of items 3 and 6 for further discussion, and the postponement of item 7 to the regular meeting of June 16th.
thank you.
And that was the motion that was approved.
Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the Front Royal County Chamber of Commerce funding request. Mr. Stanley?
Mr. Chairman,
members of the board, attached in your packet is a request from the Front Royal Warren County Chamber of Commerce requesting funding from the town and county to support their operations to the end of 2020. Specifically, they are asking for $5,000 a month from both the town and county. The Chamber is a 501c6 organization and is not eligible for the Payroll Protection or PPP program. Unfortunately, the Chamber has had to cancel or postpone its largest fundraisers, including the Wine and Craft Festival and annual dinner, due to the COVID-19 restrictions. The Chamber is providing support to our local businesses during this crisis, including launching Front Royal To Go to assist local businesses who are offering delivery, online ordering, curbside pickup, and personal shopping. They're also assisting local businesses by connecting them to resources for applying for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, or EIDL, loans and PPP, and have launched several virtual meetings to connect the business community. The cost of the county to fund their request, July through December, would be $30,000. According to Deputy Manager, Emergency Manager Rick Farrell, such funds could come from the CARES Act funding. They would not qualify for the FEMA funding. And actually, the chairman and I had met with both Nikki and the Chamber board chairman prior to the CARES Act funding coming up. So we were in the process of putting the request together. So again, I know Ms. Cullors has stated, I wouldn't say right now it's an eligible expense, and we could possibly look at the CARES Act funding. You don't have to designate the CARES Act funding currently. But Nikki, is there anything else that you'd like to ask, or you're certainly welcome to come up if you want to add anything.
I'm available to answer questions if anybody has any.
Did this go on the town council agenda last night to talk about?
I understand that they did speak about it last night. I've had a personal issue that I've been dealing with, so I was unable to be on their call, so I'm not exactly sure what the results of that were.
Mr. Stanley, do you know if that was voted on by the
No,
town?
and when we originally talked, the chamber originally was, I think, trying to go to the county was going to be first, and then the town was going to consider it. So I haven't heard anything from the town, affirmative or negative, one way or the other, but the proposed motion would be contingent upon the town approving such funding as well.
Plus, I think the town just had a work session last night,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't have been able to take any formal
Make
action
any,
anyway.
yeah, right, take any action.
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you. Do we have a motion for
I have a
this?
question, Mr. Chairman, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Where does the money from CARES Act come from, if you will?
CARES Act funding is federal funding
It's federal funding, okay.
that we have received, and we're going to have to work out a distribution. We got to share a portion of that with the town, so that's got to be worked out. But that funding is in hand in the treasurer's office.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Ham, may I ask you a question about the CARES Act? I know that you've been painstakingly going through the rules and regulations of the distribution of these funds and how they have to be managed. Is there a document that the board can read that, will indicate to us what the requirements are for these funds? My concern is we're obligating our funds before we even know what the terms and conditions of the funds distribution are.
Yes, I'm happy to share with you what I have. The CARES Act itself is unbelievably long, but the portion of the actual law that has to do with this only says that the payments made by the local government are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to coronavirus disease 2019. Were not accounted for in the budget most recently approved as of the date of enactment of this section for the state or government, and were incurred during the period that begins March 1, 2020 and ends on December 30, 2020. And that's pretty small potatoes to get to. And by the way, I agree with Mr. Farrell's interpretation of the CARES Act, that this is money that can be used for this. Not based upon what I just read to you, which is pretty slim, but upon regulations. Well, they're not really formal regulations, but they're guidance both from the state of Virginia and from the U.S. Treasury. And there's maybe 15 pages worth of stuff that you guys are welcome to see. But it
Wasn't
does
that-
specifically talk about expenses associated with the provision of economic support in connection with the COVID-19 public health emergency, such as expenditures related to the provision of grants to small businesses to reimburse the cost of business interruption. Well, the chamber itself is a small business, and of course, then they're helping other small businesses. So the actual law is very slim, but the guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department is still far from perfect, but much more stuff, and I'm happy to share that with you, or, I mean, I got it through
Mr.
Doug.
Ham,
I mean, he can
I think it's been
forward it to
shared
you.
with us. I think Mr. May had sent that out. It's like a 21-page document. You said 15.
Yes, approximately.
It was like 4 or 5 pages, just broke it down for each county as far as how much each county would get.
I remember seeing it.
I think the other attachment that Mr. May gave us too was trying to figure out the percentage between the town and the county.
Yes.
Broke it down to 5,000, this, that, or whatever, came out to 8, 11, and those things. But, we did it, and what it was, in that document, it kind of laid out semi-specifics, but then it also had, I got 3 or 4 pages, I think, of frequently asked questions to do that. And you had 3, and I think one was a Excel format too, but no, you did send that out, I think, on the 28th.
Okay, I'm going to look because I have not seen that document in my email.
I think it was copied on everybody.
Okay, I don't recall seeing it.
Well, I've had problems with emails too when I try to
I
send something
can't
to
get my
somebody.
email open in here for some reason, so.
I couldn't get mine.
Yeah, it won't open up, so I can't find it.
I,
I'll get it.
Thank
But I would
you.
think too that maybe we're going to discuss this in work session.
Yeah, we
well,
are.
that's one
So-
of the motion options, and I was going to say, I'm comfortable with that one. And bless your heart, Nikki, for being here. And I'm sorry you've had to sit here all this time. My heart goes out to you, honey. It really does.
Are we making a motion on this at all?
I will move the Board of Supervisors postpone the request for further discussion at the June 9th work session, and that way we can get up to snuff and gives the town the opportunity as well to, so that's I'm going with that motion.
I'm sorry, say your motion again without your mask.
Second.
I move the Board of Supervisors postpone the request for further discussion at the June 9th work session.
Second.
Okay,
Could
but I
we get a
thought we
roll call,
talked about
please?
earlier that this was contingent on the town doing it, and we're going to take the first step. And then if we wait till the 9th, we can't do it. And then the town would do the 8th. So if the town approved it, we'd meet on the 9th in work session, so we push this back to the 16th.
16th.
So it seems like to me, we go forward with this now, and at least it's out there, and like I said, it is contingent upon the town. And I think the chamber could use the money as quickly as possible, and this is going to delay it 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Well, my concern is, we haven't really sat down as a group except to be told the money is going to be made available, and we're already allocating it before we've ever really sat down and discussed.
And what we've allocated so far with the schools is roughly 17,000, and with this here, it'd be another 30,000, which would be about 47,000. In my understanding, the total amount the county's getting is roughly 3.5 million. So I don't think this is going to impact it that much, and we'll have a lot more time to sit down and discuss this in the work session as far as how things should go.
Then I agree with that perspective on it, but I also agree, that's just the way I've always done financial business at my house. I don't spend it until I get my organization thought there, so.
Those dollars are already being talked about. We're working on making the separation happen. We'll have the money to do it.
Well, be nice when the whole group knows that plan.
Okay?
Do we have a
Change the motion?
substitute motion, or would you want to withdraw your original motion?
Well, Mr. Fox seconded it, so I
He
guess we
actually
need to
seconded
move
me.
on. And if it gets voted down, then we'll,
Substitute motion?
how do we
Is
do
this
it?
time for that?
we can,
What would there, I mean, it would be a directly opposite motion, right?
Yes.
Okay. Give me a
Pretty
second.
much what was proposed.
Mr. Mabe, I apologize, I found it.
Okay, thank you.
Or we can vote on the motion as it is and have another one come back.
Well, that's,
That'd be easier.
Well, that would certainly be easier, and I'm not seeing the word substitute motion in your
right.
rules.
We can-
Okay, let's do it that way. Motion's on the table.
It has been seconded. Discussion's made. Could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Mabe?
No.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
No. So we put it off for another couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So that will actually go on our work session on the 9th, so we can vote it on the 16th. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it has been postponed for discussion, but at the work session, the consensus of the board would need to be to put it on the June 16th agenda.
It's fine.
Isn't it possible that the board can always have a special vote if we so choose to do that?
We'd have to advertise as a meeting to do that,
Okay, and it has to be advertised for how many days, 3?
at least three.
Three.
Ideally, we have an emergency meeting, but, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call this an emergency. if
No,
we're
it's
talking about
not.
funding for next
No.
month.
It's not, okay.
But we are.
I'm just looking at ways to remediate
Right, I mean,
the
because
disagreements amongst my peers.
We,
So anyway.
we could, I mean, there is discussion on here in our work session today that we could discuss this, and we'd still have 3 days to advertise for the 9th to make a vote if we need to, correct?
You could do it that way, and the 3 working days is the normal meeting under FOIA, but any special meeting can be done at less than 3 days' notice.
Well, our next meeting would be next Tuesday.
I would just interject, you know, I think we're talking about funding for July, so we could get a check at the end of June for them either way.
Okay, so we're not,
I
we're
think-
not making any,
I
we're,
think
yeah,
if,
hardship.
well, so council's going to talk about it the 8th, you could talk about it today, and if you got a consensus, then we just put on the 16th for approval.
Okay.
But I think if we could tell the town, there's a consensus of the board that wants to support the request, whether it's today or the 9th, we can at least let both the chamber know and the
Right.
town
Right.
know that
Okay,
it's the
so-
intent of the board to approve the request.
We're not creating a hardship for the Chamber of Commerce, because I think Mr. Carter was concerned about that, and I do,
Well,
I
and
mean, I agree. I don't want to create any hardships.
We could get
for
a
them.
check to them by the end of the month if that
Right,
was.
and
the-
I
Okay.
don't want to cause a hardship either, but I just feel like we're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit, and I would just be more comfortable having the discussion on it and then deciding
I'll leave
things.
the closed session.
So,
Let's go.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the public comment period. The general public comment period is an opportunity for citizens to give input on relevant county issues which are not on the board's agenda and if not intended as a question and answer period. Emily, do you have anyone signed up? Did Gary?
Yes. Yes, so I was able to receive his comments, and they are general, so I'm glad I was able to receive them. So this is from Gary Kushner, 1106 Fetchit Road. The Warren County state of emergency was instituted in March after the governor's declaration. While the virus was not an honest emergency then in Warren County, our declaration was made to ensure recovery of expenses possibly related to the pandemic. There have been 10-plus weeks to stock up on PPE, other emergency assets, and to prepare response plans, but the virus is still not an emergency in Warren County. According to the Virginia Department of Health, as of June 1st, there were only 157 positive cases, with 14 hospitalizations and 2 deaths in Warren County. I humbly ask this board to explain how that reality constitutes an emergency for our 40,000 citizens now. When the virus first arose, there were more questions than knowledge. We now have a much greater understanding of the virus in that it presents the most risk to persons with an underlying medical condition, especially with the elderly. Experience has shown that approximately half of the persons that actually contract the virus do not even show symptoms. While asymptomatic persons may have the virus, they are minimally contagious compared to those actually demonstrating symptoms. We know that the primary infection occurs from person to person, and the CDC recently published that there is minimal risk from surfaces than previously thought. The public was told that the shutdown was needed to slow the curve of positive cases and to permit authorities to ensure there was adequate PPE and that hospitals wouldn't be overrun. Strangely enough, with the closure of non-essential businesses, self-quarantine, physical separation in public, increased hand washing, less face touching, surface disinfecting, and some mask wearing, all three objectives have been achieved. In fact, the VDH reports that the 7-day average for hospitalizations has declined since the first week of May, and the 7-day average of deaths has also been reduced since that same time. Plus, the governor has advertised that they have adequate plans and stocks for needed resources. But considering all of that, the governor has not lessened the shutdown from Phase 1, but instead introduced a face covering mandate inside businesses and extended his original order from June 10th to will be determined or infinite. Now, I may not be the smartest person around, but it's difficult to understand why restrictions would be increased when progress has been proven. The governor boasted that decisions would be made on science and facts, but some other considerations now seem to be taking precedence. Virginia law grants the governor extensive authority when the public health is in danger, but many are convinced he has abused that power. I mean, what good is authority if you don't exercise it? He has chosen a one-solution-fits-all mentality when only the counties with high-density populations are significantly affected. The evidence of this is that approximately 35% of positive cases are just in Fairfax and Prince William counties alone. Plus, they account for over half of the deaths. The impact of the shutdown has been extensive, to say the least. Houses of worship were temporarily shuttered. The most vulnerable, those in adult care facilities, have been under virtual lockdown to assure their survival. Restaurants, gyms, theaters, bowling alleys, and other businesses termed non-essential have been placed in economic stagnation, but there are still bills. Most of the people who staff those businesses, many who are our neighbors, have been unemployed for almost 3 months and they still have bills. The country has 40 million unemployed, a staggering number, with the extent of the economy damage yet to be determined. Students have lost almost half an educational year, and the fabric of our society has been frayed. Certainly, not least, is that the citizens' ability to participate in their governance has been diminished during this emergency. Nothing can substitute for the same room interaction between elected representatives and the public they are sworn to serve. While the deputy clerk does her best at reading submitted comments, I guarantee you my presentation of this testimony would have a different impact. Additionally, as I outlined in an email sent to you about a week ago, Dr. Mark Siegel of the NYU School of Medicine has been attempting to get acknowledgement of the disease of despair. This is the term affixed to the effects of depression, anxiety, fear, and stress resulting from the government-imposed societal shutdown associated with the virus. It manifests itself in suicides, overdoses, and deaths from alcohol abuse. Additionally, the business closures and unemployment will affect the tranquility of home life, and there will be an increased child abuse and domestic violence. These factors, in and of themselves, will cause a diminishment of our immunity and enable other diseases to take hold when otherwise they would have been defeated by our body's defense system. In 2018, 158,000 deaths were associated with this condition with typical societal problems. It has been projected that the COVID-19 shutdown will produce an additional 75,000 to 150,000 disease of despair deaths on top of the 100,000 COVID-related deaths already experienced. I can't help but wonder how many deaths would have been avoided if there had been a virus mitigation without business shutdown. I suspect that the mainstream media has not chosen to acknowledge this factor because it doesn't fit their narrative. In any case, the minimal virus impact in our community and disastrous effects of business shutdowns make it imperative that our state of emergency be ended. Those with symptoms can self-quarantine and get appropriate testing and treatment. The most at-risk population can continue to limit their contact with the public. The remainder of us can continue the improved hygiene and physical distancing and wear face coverings when we feel it's appropriate and assess the risk we want to take as free, mature adults. Businesses can assess the governor's orders and reopen if they choose and practice responsible health practices. The public can then determine which businesses they feel are safe to patronize. With or without the state of emergency, there will be more virus infections. Only herd immunity or possibly a vaccine will offer an ultimate solution. Opening now will give us the opportunity to lessen the despair deaths and improve our quality of life. While there may be a temptation to continue the formal emergency in fear that there would be unintended financial consequences, the improvements in our quality of life resulting from the opening and the opportunity to begin economic recovery should take precedence. Surely, Warren County will be reimbursed for the COVID-19 expenses realized to date, and with the emergency concluded, there should be limited, if any, need for further expenditures. While the state government may not agree with our decision, I can't imagine there could be repercussions regarding the distribution of federal stimulus funds. Considering the impacts to our lives and community already, it would be impossible to put a price tag on the value of being able to begin returning to our old normal ways. So who is going to demonstrate the appropriate level of leadership and to make the motion to end the COVID-19 state of emergency in Warren County? Then, hopefully, there will be a unanimous vote to open again. However, if only a majority of the supervisors have the wisdom and courage to vote aye, that will be good enough for me and the other 40,000-plus county citizens. At a minimum, there should be the above-noted motion and vote. Failure to do even that would be very disappointing, and each citizen could assess its meaning. This new board has been consistently complimented on challenging the establishment, making informed decisions, and on being transparent. I am hopeful you will consider the facts presented here and choose individual liberty and common sense over fear and politics. Thank you for listening. There is also one comment that I received through the YouTube live stream from Christy Atwood. When will the public receive an update on the status of the EDA civil lawsuit? Has a cap been set for legal fees, and who is the contact person between Warren County and Sands Anderson? The EDA states there is a Warren County contact. And no other comments have been received, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There is no one in the audience that would like to speak. We'll consider the public comment period closed. Thank you. Open for a motion.
I move the board enter into a closed meeting under the provisions of Section 2.2-3711A5 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. I further move that discussion be limited to industry in the Route 340-522 corridor. I also move the board enter into a closed meeting under the provisions of Sections 2.2-3711A7 and A8 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation regarding the Industrial Development Authority of the Town of Front Royal and the County of Warren, Virginia, the EDA, and Jennifer McDonald et al., and various other defendants named and to be named, including claims and potential litigation relating to other possible liabilities of the EDA and the recovery of EDA funds and assets. Finally, I move the board enter into a closed meeting under the provisions of Section 2.2-3711A8 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. I further move that discussion be limited to a current lease agreement with county-owned property.
Second.
Any additional discussion? We're in closed session.
No.
Need a motion.
You got to go through.
Could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Carter?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Mabe?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Exempted from open meeting requirements under Sections 2.2-3711A5, A7, and A8 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
Second. Second.
Is there any discussion? Could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Cullors?
Aye.
Mr. Mabe?
Aye.
Ms. Oates?
Aye.
Mr. Carter?
Is there any additional new business? If none stated, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.